Greetings. Welcome to the California Certified Organic Farmers Introduction to Organic Exports and Imports webinar. We're very excited to have 4 wonderful speakers with us today who will share their insight in exporting and importing organic products. But before we begin, I wanted to give a warm thank you to our sponsor, .organic. .organic is the domain extension available exclusively to the organic industry that lets users know your site is verified organic. Ditch that hard-to-remember web address and get a URL that lets your users know you're organic from the domain level. To learn more and apply, visit www.get.organic. If you're having difficulties connecting to the webinar, if you can't see or you can't hear, please call our office for support at 831-423-2263. Again, that's 831-423-2263, and press 0 for the operator, and someone will help you connect to the webinar. My name is Megan Donovan, and I will be your host today. I'm a program assistant at California Certified Organic Farmers. CCOF is a nonprofit organization that advances organic agriculture for a healthy world through organic certification, education, advocacy, and promotion. We envision a world where organic is the norm. And we're very happy to have 4 great presenters with a wealth of knowledge in exporting and importing organic products. We have Game Gregory from CCOF, Jeremy Johnson from Traditional Medicinals, Jay Molinski from Intelligentsia Coffee, and Sergio Nuez de Arco from Andinian Naturals. And I will introduce each speaker in more depth before their individual presentations. So before we get started with our first speaker, I wanted to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's webinar. We're looking at an example of the GoToWebinar attendee interface, which is made up of 2 parts. The viewer window on the left, which allows you to see everything the presenter will share on the screen, and the control panel on the right. The control panel is how you can participate in today's event, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. By clicking the orange arrow, you can open and close the control panel. You can also set the control panel not to auto-hide when inactive if you prefer to always keep it open. The audio pane provides audio information. By default, you have joined the webinar by mic and speakers. Go to the audio setup to select your computer speakers or headset devices. If you prefer, you can join the audio by telephone by selecting Use Telephone, and the dial-in information will be displayed below. During the presentation, you'll have the ability to send in questions to our webinar staff through the questions pane. Simply type in your question and click Send. You can also get our attention by raising your hand. At the end of each presentation and at the end of today's session, we'll have a question and answer session. So you can also send in your questions during the presenter's talk, and we'll save them for the end of the presentation. And as a reminder, we will record the webinar and send a link out to everyone once it's up on our website. So we want to give you a chance to kind of test out the questions pane. If you could write in and let us know what the biggest challenges for your company in entering into the organic import-export market, and as well, what would you like to learn today? And we'll get back to those answers after our first presentation, but we really want to hear from you and know who's in the audience. So it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Game Gregory. Game is the Administrative Supervisor at CCOF Certification Services, LLC, one of the nation's oldest and largest organic certifiers. She oversees a wide variety of projects processes, and tools that help the business run smoothly, including overseeing CCOF's diverse international programs and export systems. In her 6 years at CCOF, Gregory has played a role in implementing new initiatives that provide tools and systems that allow CCOF to adapt to the maturing organic landscape. So Game, thanks for being with us here today, and I will turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Megan. So, international opportunities for organic producers, exports and imports. I'm excited to introduce some of the basic regulatory information in my presentation. So a little bit about CCOF certification services. We have about 80 inspectors and 60 staff. We have more than 3,300 certified operations, and that makes up about 5,300 inspections a year throughout the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. And that's about 14% of certified operations in the U.S. and 58% of California certified operations. And we keep ongoing relationships and communications with the National Organic Program, National Organic Standards Board, and industry participants. And we're engaged in improving the organic system, upholding standards, and maintaining international access for our members. So some CCOF operation export trends. So a little note here, this information is CCOF operation specific, but once I get into the regulatory information, that's all, that's industry-wide. So we have 787 of our 3,300 operations that export or plan to export through equivalence arrangements. And we don't actually track our operations that are exporting to nations through other means, which I'll explain later. And for those operations exporting through equivalencies, we found that the most commonly exported products are dried fruits and nuts, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, processed fruits and vegetables, wine, and then some specialty goods like superfoods, baby foods, that kind of thing. So exporting, importing requirements. The basic rule is that organic products must meet the regulations of the destination country or region. So the exception is nations that don't have federally regulated standards, and I'll give some examples of that later. And there are several ways to meet a nation's organic standards. So the three main ways that you would do that are through an equivalence arrangement, which I'll go into detail about, through a recognition agreement, or through direct certification to that nation's organic standard. And I'll be focused on exports from the U.S. and imports into the U.S., but these general methods for exporting and importing apply to other nations as well. So nations with non-regulated standards. These locations may have standards, particularly private certifier standards, but they are not federally regulated, and so there's no official barrier to selling organic product that's certified to another nation's standards. For instance, our National Organic Program. So imports into the U.S. require NOP certification or, equivalence agreement with one of our equivalent nations. And in most cases, in these non-regulated standard areas, they'll accept NOP certification, or if you're in Canada, they'll accept CORE certification, Canada Organic Regime. And some common markets that don't have federally regulated organic standards are Australia, New Zealand, UAE, Hong Kong, and that's not China, that's Hong Kong specifically, India, and Israel. And at the end of the presentation, I will give you a website that helps you check the various nations' standards and see which category they fit into. and how you can import product or export product from them, or vice versa. And your certifier should also be able to tell you if a country falls into this non-regulated standard or equivalence or trade agreement category. And for each shipment to these non-regulated standard locations, a transaction certificate is almost always required. And that transaction certificate simply states that your product is certified to whatever standard it's certified to, so National Organic Program if you're shipping from the U.S. And you'll send that along with your organic certificate. And these transaction certificates are required for both exports and imports. So some locations may only require your organic certificate for the export, so they may not require a transaction certificate. And because this can change a little bit with these non-regulated locations, you'll want to always check with your buyer in that nation to make sure that you're following all the steps before you start getting your export prepared for shipment. And I'll show you some transaction and export certificates later in the presentation. So equivalence arrangements, this is the bulk of this presentation. So currently the U.S. has equivalence arrangements with Canada, the EU, Japan, Korea, and Switzerland. And an equivalence arrangement basically establishes the organic standards of two nations as equivalent. So organic product certified to either standards can be sold in either market. And there are some critical variances such as labeling. Labels must meet the labeling requirements of the destination market. Each destination market has a shipment-specific export or import document, which must be completed by the certifier of the exporter. And there's one exception to this, Canada, which I'll go over. And the export or import documents must be issued per shipment, and it should accompany the shipments to their destination. And then each equivalence has location restrictions, which means that the product must have final processing occur in one of the nations that entered into this specific agreement. And compliance to critical variances must be verified by the organic certifier of that exporter. And of course, there's always additional food labeling requirements that might apply that fall outside of organic standards. So it's always important to research the nation's food labeling standards for your product to ensure you're meeting those standards before you export. So on to some specific critical variances for each of these U.S. equivalence agreements. So first, U.S.-Canada Equivalence Agreement. This is our oldest agreement, and it's also one of our most open agreements. So final processing can occur anywhere. This is the only equivalence arrangement where you can be certified to the core standard outside of Canada and ship your product into the U.S. through this equivalence. And as well as you can be certified to National Organic Program and be located in Mexico, for example, and ship your product from Mexico to Canada. And like I said, this is the only equivalence agreement that gives you that kind of open location ability. So exports into Canada, those critical variances that have to be met, no sodium nitrate is allowed, no hydroponic or aeroponic methods are allowed, livestock must meet the Canada Organic Regime stocking rates, and then there are some exclusions. So products outside of the core Canada Organic Regime scope, such as pet food, personal care products, and aquaculture products, cannot be sold in Canada through the equivalence. So they can't be labeled as core, but they can be sold as National Organic Program organic only, which means no reference to core. They simply say USDA organic and have the USDA seal. So US-EU, this is one where final processing has to occur in the US or the EU. And exports to the EU, no antibiotics are allowed on apple pear products, which is also not allowed in National Organic Program standards as of October 2014, I believe, but that's still part of the equivalence. And then wine must meet EU organic wine standards. So that'll be verified by your certifier. Imports into the U.S., wine must meet NOP production and labeling, and then livestock has to be produced without antibiotics. And there's a small exclusion here of aquatic animals, fish and shellfish, cannot be exported from the EU to the U.S. So on to Japan. Final processing, again, has to occur in the U.S. or Japan. There are no critical variances, so almost all products can be exported and imported between these two nations, with the exclusion of livestock and alcohol products, which aren't covered under the agreement, but it simply means that if they are exported or imported between the nations, they cannot reference the other nation's organic standard. So you can sell organic alcohol from the U.S. in Japan. You just can't say that it's jazz equivalent or anything. And then this one has a little bit of a tricky labeling requirement where the jazz seal is required for all organic products sold in Japan and must be applied by a jazz certified operation. So a jazz certified operation, usually someone in Japan. You can get jazz certification in the U.S., so it's not really recommended because there's actually an agreement, a contract that a U.S. operation can have with a Japanese operation to apply the jazz seal in the U.S. for that specific operation. And those details are on the CCOF website, which I will guide you to at the end of my presentation. Korea. So final processing, U.S. or Korea. Exports to Korea are limited to just processed product, and that's processed product as defined by the Korean Food Code, which is more heavily regulated than, and it's a different standard than processed product would be in the U.S. For instance, simply drying something is not a processed product. Once again, no antibiotics on apple or pear products, and then imports into the U.S., livestock has to be produced without antibiotics. And there have been some difficulties with between the definition of processed products, and it cuts fresh trade out of the agreement, and there isn't any conversation about opening that up at this time. So our most recent equivalence agreement is with Switzerland. Final processing, U.S. or Switzerland, just like the other agreements. And then this one is, the critical variances are limited to just wine for exports to Switzerland, so must meet Swiss organic wine standards, which are very similar, almost identical to EU wine standards. And then imports to U.S. must meet NOP wine standards and livestock produced without antibiotics. And for each of these equivalence arrangements, the USDA and destination seals can be used. And we highly suggest that you use the destination seal, for instance, the Canada or the EU seal, because it does give your product a little bit more credibility for the local consumers. However, it does open up a little bit more complication in your labeling requirements. So, you know, you have to follow the size and color and placement regulations for that standard. And there's often additional information that has to be added to your label. So that's the kind of thing that you'll have to work through with your certifier. And of course, labels have to be approved by your certifier before you can export. So selling organic through a recognition agreement, currently the U.S. only has one recognition agreement, and that's with Taiwan, and that's a one-way recognition agreement. So Taiwan has recognized the National Organic Program as sufficient enough to meet the Taiwanese organic standards, which basically means a National Organic Program certified operation in the U.S. can export to Taiwan and sell their product as organic in Taiwan. And this, just like any other export, would require documentation like a transaction certificate. And there are specific transaction certificates that are required for Taiwan. And finally, you can reach another market through direct certification. This is for markets that are have national standards enforced, and those nations haven't come into any type of an agreement with your location nation. So China and Brazil are two of the biggest players in this category. And Mexico, once its standard is actually enforced, if an agreement isn't reached, Mexico would actually fall in this category, where in order to export product to that location, your operation would have to meet directly that standard. So it's not that you could be NOP and be equivalent, it's you actually have to be certified by a Chinese certifier or a Brazilian certifier. And finally, some export-import documentation. So like I said earlier, these are country and shipment specific. So you can see on the left is a Japan export certificate. And so this is the specific certificate that they're expecting to see for every organic shipment entering the country, entering Japan. And then on the right, you can see this is a CCOF version of a transaction certificate. So a transaction certificate will vary depending on the certifier issuing it. And here are more examples. So the left is an EU export certificate, and the right is actually a Korean export certificate. And the basics of export certificates are they have exporter-importer information, shipment details like the products, and the weight, and issued by certifier, and accompany the shipment. All right, so some resources that I suggest you look into. CCOF International Program pages. So we have all of the information that I've given here, as well as labeling guides and some more in-depth details for these different markets. The OTA trade guide and an organic products website that helps you see per destination the regulations, what's required for exporting and importing. And then that second website gives you access to a database where you can actually list yourself as an exporter, and then you can also see product from around the world. And then finally, the NOP International Trade pages. These are, the basic regulations and agreement outlines.
All right, so thank you very much. That was a great overview of all the equivalencies. And we had a number of questions come in. Someone wrote in asking that you mentioned a dozen countries or so. What about other countries? If you didn't mention it, is it still open without regulations?
Yeah, so that depends on the nation itself. The nations that I listed are the ones that are most commonly exported to, and anything outside of that, if they don't have a federally regulated standard, it's open for product. So I really suggest going to, and I'm going to go back to the resources, the Global Organic Trade Guide. You can actually choose a specific country and see what's required for exporting.
Great. Thank you very much. And then another question that came in is that does the EU still include the UK? And sort of related, when will that change occur? And is the US looking to create a new equivalence with the UK?
Yeah, so right now it definitely still includes the UK. We haven't heard any discussions around the UK closing their imports to EU equivalent product. And we're just watching that. Like I said, there's really been no talk about it. I think that it's probably going to be one of the later topics to be discussed because they have a lot of other issues going on. if standards were changed, CCOF would absolutely find a way to help our clients get into that, and I would expect that the NOP would probably enter into some type of an agreement, but that takes, you know, time and effort on both countries.
Okay, great. That's good information to know. And then we also had someone who was wondering, what's the difference between an export certificate and a transaction certificate?
Yeah, so those words are used pretty interchangeably, and it's really just whatever the destination market calls a certificate of organic transaction. So transaction certificate can be used for domestic shipments even, and that's how CCOF differentiates them. An export certificate specifically relates to exporting your product to another nation.
Great. And we're going to take one more question for now, but if anybody has more questions for GAME, we'll get back to those at the end of the webinar. And there's a couple people looking for locations where they could sell, for example, organic beef products that are NOP certified, or on the other end, they're looking to import organic bones from other country. Are there lists that are available?
Yeah, so I'd go to the other OTA guide, the US Organic Products Guide, and you can search by, I think you can search by product in there. And I think that's probably going to be your best bet. Otherwise, you'll want to make sure that it's either traded through an equivalence and verified that it wasn't produced with antibiotics when it's coming back into the U.S., or that if you want to export to, say, Canada, you have to meet the stocking rates for the Canada standard. But U.S. organic products is probably your best bet.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again, and we will hear back from you again at the end of the webinar. So I would like to introduce our next speaker, Jeremy Johnson. Jeremy Johnson is Senior Counsel at Traditional Medicinals. He is actively involved with all things in the legal and regulatory realm related to organic processed products, from commenting on the National Organic Standards Board proposals to exports and compliance with current good manufacturing practices. So welcome, Jeremy. I'll let you tell the audience a little bit more about Traditional Medicinals and your experience importing and exporting organic products.
Thank you, Megan. So hi all. As Megan said, I'm Jeremy Johnson, Senior Counsel here at Traditional Medicinals. I'll apologize ahead of time. I'm not a marketer, so my slides are relatively sparse, but hopefully I can, give you the information you're looking for. So Traditional Medicinals is an herbal products company that was founded in 1974 in Sonoma County, where we're still located some 42 years later. We have over 50 U.S. products, over 30 Canadian products, and recently we introduced several Mexico-specific products. We primarily produce herbal teas that are marketed as dietary supplements, which obviously plays a little differently in the world of import and export. So I believe that Jay and Sergio will go more into import, so I'll touch on it more briefly. But one of our primary tenets here at TM is formulating our products and sourcing our herbs so that they're geoauthentic. So the idea behind that is the geoauthenticity is sourcing an herb from where it came from. So as you know, we can grow almost anything anywhere these days. You probably could grow something hydroponically on Antarctica if you really wanted to. But here at TM, we try and source from the region where an herb is native. And in a practical sense, that means sourcing and importing herbs from 40 countries at various differing levels, as indicated by the image on the screen, some countries more than others. So in sourcing, we have a vendor qualification process for people that we're importing from that starts with a paper audit, and after a successful paper audit, we have on-site audits. So we'll send folks out to India, Australia, China, wherever, and then after the vendor passes, which hopefully they do, then the buyers can start buying from that source. And so obviously those audits cover things like organic certificates and compliance with that. We also continually do annual audits as well. for the shipments that we get internationally, we do require pre-shipment samples that go through a series of tests to ensure they meet, or at least the pre-ship meets the specifications for the particular herb. And that obviously can save a lot of time, money, and headaches ahead of time, because if you're shipping something from India, you don't want it to get here and not be what you want. So for export, I mentioned earlier that TM has 3 country-specific product lines. So we have the U.S. product line, the Canadian product line, and the Mexican product line. We don't directly ship into other countries. However, through our distributors, international customers can and do order product that they then sell in other countries. So I'll kind of go on some of the general things that we found that you need in a lot of countries throughout the world or to be aware of. And again, this relates more to processed product because that's what we do. So generally we found that you're going to have to give your export clients free sales certificates. Generally you can get those from the Food and Drug Administration. The state of California has a program. You can even get it from local chambers of commerce. It really depends on what the destination country wants. CCOF obviously can help you with export certificates if required, so for Japan or the EU. Several countries will want GMP certificates, so to verify that you're complying with your local good manufacturing practices. The unfortunate part about the USA is there is no official GMP certificate from the Food and Drug Administration. So a lot of times you'll have to find a creative way to do so. The state of California has a certificate which works in many situations. Clients that you export to will many times require audit reports from third parties. So if you're audited by NSF, that usually works. Many countries also require finished product specifications. And again, these are for processed products. If you have a raw agricultural commodity, that would be a different story. They'll also require product labels, so to ensure that you're compliant with their labeling requirements in the destination country, and just to keep track. And the reason why a lot of these countries are doing that is they're actually either notifying or registering your product. Many countries have registration and notification requirements, and those documents help the country add your products to their registry. Other considerations that you'll have to be aware of when exporting are tariffs, which can be rather elusive. We found that although there is a harmonized tariff schedule that many countries abide by, it unfortunately is not applied consistently either within a country or between countries. We do not have a value-added tax here in the United States, but many countries do. You have to be aware of that when exporting to a country. It can range based on the country. For example, with our Mexican products, some of our products have a VAT of 0, some have a VAT of 16. So, that's certainly something that is a cost that you'll need to be aware of with foreign countries when you export. For countries that are within a free trade zone, so for example, Canada and Mexico, there are specific forms that relate to that. So for NAFTA, you'll need a sugar declaration, whether or not your product has sugar in it. You will also have to fill out a NAFTA declaration, which indicates that you fall within NAFTA, so you're exempt from those tariffs. So generally for processed products in particular, it's important to look at country-specific regulations. This will allow you to understand what labeling requirements there are in that country, and if there are registration or notification requirements. Many times if you're working with a buyer in a particular country, they will be aware and they can help you in that process of getting the documents the government wants and sort of liaising with their government. But it is important to be aware that just because your product is properly labeled here in the United States, that does not mean it's properly labeled for Mexico or Colombia or wherever else you want to sell the product. And so in terms of registration and notification, our experience is more with Mexico and Canada. So an example of our processed products and how they're treated differently. In the U.S., we're dietary supplements, so we follow, one regulatory authority, the Food and Drug Administration, and one set of rules. In Canada, for example, some of our products are regulated as foods, so they have one labeling standard, and they're under the authority of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, the CFIA. And others of our products are considered natural health products, which are under the authority of Health Canada's Natural and Non-Prescription Health Products Directorate. The NHPs have vastly different labeling requirements, and pre-approval is required. So you can't just export, even if you had labeling that complied, you would still need pre-approval. Similarly, in Mexico, some of our products are regulated as foods, while others are regulated as herbal remedies, which require pre-approval. However, in Mexico, there's one government agency, COFEPRIS, that handles both of those. And in both Canada and Mexico, and in several countries internationally, for processed products, not only do you have to notify or register your products, you do have to register your facility itself. So in our case, our Sebastopol facility is registered in Mexico and Canada, as well as other countries, so that your products can be sold as well. And so, general recommendations that I have for processed product folks that are looking to sell abroad is, Gemma mentioned trade associations are great. They can provide you a lot of useful information. So if you're, for organics, CCOF is great. For, if you're selling herbal products, there's American Herbal Products Association. A lot of people have done this before, so you're not the first person to jump into exporting processed products. So I definitely would say seek out information from other industry members that have been there. I've always found that everyone's going to share what they've learned. And the most important thing, of course, is to look into the regulations of the country you want to enter into. It's obviously easier if you speak the language. So Australia, New Zealand, Canada, if you speak English, that's great. Other countries that are not English, if you don't speak the language, can be difficult, but many countries also offer the information in English, or at least some information in English, so that's always a good place to start. So that's my overview, and I would have a slide with my email address, but it's jjohnson@tradmed.com. That's jjohnson@tradmed.com. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Great. Well, thank you very much. That was interesting to hear about how things are regulated differently in different countries, and that you have to kind of take that into account. What might be in one country is a food product, is a herbal remedy in another. So if anybody has questions for Jeremy, please send them in. And again, we just kind of love to hear from the audience in general. What export markets are you considering entering? So write us in and let us know. And we have a question that's coming in right now, Jeremy. So you talked about getting approval for your forms. How do you find those agencies?
So for Mexico and Canada, the Canadians notoriously are nice human beings. So I found that both the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and the Natural and Non-Prescription Health Products Directorate, they're very helpful. And if you have questions, you can call or email, and they're very responsive. The Mexican government isn't quite as responsive. A lot of their regulations are newer, just like their organic regime is new. So it's a little more difficult there and requires a lot more work. But for the Canadians, they're very helpful, and internationally as well. The UK is very helpful in our experience, and so has Japan. So it really depends, but I find that governments abroad seem to be a little more helpful than the American government.
All right, thanks. And then you're also wondering, what is the GMA certificate in California that you're using? The good manufacturing.
Oh, the good manufacturing practice?
Yeah.
I can get back to you on that. I don't know the exact title of it, but I can definitely email Megan, and she can get back in touch with you.
Okay, that would be great. We'll be sure to include that in the email we send up following up from the webinar. And then we have one more question from one of our CERT staff who's wondering how organic certification staff can help their clients with these processes. So, Game, do you want to kind of chime in on that?
Yeah. So, we like to help as much as we can. Unfortunately, our hands are a little bit tied because our work is organic certification. We don't give advice on food codes and food labeling, and so our biggest advice is go to those governments. Like Jeremy said, they can be and usually are very helpful.
All right, thank you. So we have one more question, and we have someone in the audience who's a wholesale private label provider. If we ship to the UK from our facility and are listed as a shipper on record, are we liable for VAT and tariffs, or is the brand owner?
So I can't give legal advice per se on liability, but I would say with all of these things, it depends on title transfer. So if you transfer title here in the United States, then the person that is sending it ultimately is responsible. If you don't transfer title until it gets to the United Kingdom, you will have to negotiate that with the ultimate end user in the United Kingdom.
Okay, great. So thank you very much. And again, if anybody has any more questions for Jeremy, we'll open things up at the end of all presentations. So thank you very much, Jeremy, and we'll move on to our next speaker. So I'd like to introduce Jay Molinski, who has been the Green Coffee Logistics Manager and Green Coffee Buyer for Intelligentsia Coffee for the past 4 years. He has been working with the organic certification process with Intelligentsia for the past 6 years. So Jay, thank you for taking time to share your experience on importing and exporting organic coffee and tea with us.
Well, thank you, and thanks, Jeremy. That was awesome. So like Megan said, my name is Jay Molinski, and I'm with Intelligentsia Coffee. I'm the Green Coffee Logistics Manager and one of our green coffee buyers. And so I handle all of the importing that we do from currently about 18 different countries throughout Central America, South America, and Africa. And then I also help source and purchase coffees and I'm part of the quality control chain. So today, and myself, like Jeremy, I'm not a marketer, but today, as I give you a brief overview of our operation and what we do, what we import, et cetera, I'll just kind of share some photos of our facilities and cafes and our partners that we get to work for. So Intelligentsia is a specialty coffee roaster and retailer that was founded in 1995 and is based in Chicago. We roast coffee to order every day on our vintage roasting machines, and we kind of help pioneer the direct trade system that we work by, in which we work directly with coffee farmers, producers, mills, and exporters to sustainably source some of the highest quality coffees in the world. Coffee is normally traded as a commodity where the prices are dependent on the current market, and with our system we are able to pay premium prices based on quality tiers regardless of where the market is. And as part of that program, we also visit our partners regularly throughout the harvest seasons and throughout the year. We help them make improvements to increase the quality of their coffee so that we can pay them more, and in turn, which allows them to get paid more by other coffee roasters as well. So right now we roast, I would say, around 3 million pounds of coffee a year. Our main facility is in Chicago, where we roast about 75% of that volume, and the remainder of our coffee is roasted at facilities in Los Angeles and San Francisco. We also have 6 cafes in Chicago, 3 in Los Angeles, 1 in New York City, and we're currently working on opening cafes in San Francisco and Boston with plans to continue to expand to hopefully another 10 cafes or so in the next 5 years. So the majority of our business is coffee. We do also own a tea company that is called Kilogram Tea. However, we do not import any tea. All of the teas are purchased from companies within the U.S. Probably about 90% of those teas are certified organic, however. And beyond our cafe business, we are growing in our retail business and currently in several large stores, including Target, Whole Foods, Fresh Market, Earth Fare, Treasure Island, Mariano's, several things like that. And with regards to companies' imports, we don't really export too much. It's very infrequent that we export roasted coffee, but we do import almost all of our coffee. So we started out by purchasing coffee that had already been brought to the U.S. by U.S. importers. And we operated like that for about 10 years until we started developing our direct trade program and working with specific farms and regions and purchasing coffees from the same producers. We eventually moved into importing coffee ourselves about 6 or 7 years ago. Initially just a few containers at a time, but now we import almost 100% of all the coffee that we purchase. And one of the major driving forces to do that, beyond the monetary reasons, was the issue of traceability of where the coffee was coming from, along with the traceability of how much the producers that we were working with were being paid. And now that we have formed these lasting relationships, we are able to work with farms and mills directly and pay them directly and see the entirety of the money chain to them. Currently, we are importing to importing from about 18 different countries. We have partners in Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Costa Rica. In South America, we have Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, Brazil. And then in Africa, we have Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, and Zambia. Maybe I missed a few in there, but that's about the extent of it. About 20% of those coffees that we source are certified organic. Currently, these coffees come from Mexico, Nicaragua, Peru, Bolivia, and Ethiopia, occasionally Honduras, and we are working on directly sourcing coffees from Guatemala and Colombia as well. And we also kind of help some of our partners become certified organic. Recently, we just purchased our first container of coffee from our partner in Ethiopia that was certified organic for the first time, and we kind of helped them do that by basically, purchasing the coffee last year for the price that we would this year at organic to help them pay for their organic certification. So hopefully we can extend that program and do more things like that as well. So as far as the importing process goes, importing green coffee into the U.S. is a fairly simple process. Coffee shipments into the U.S. do involve 3 government agencies, though. You have the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency, or the CBP, and then you also have the FDA and the USDA. And there are some laws and rules that must be followed in order to import into the U.S. And those rules kind of start with the exporter. The exporter must do several things, which include clearly labeling the bags with the country of origin, completing an importer security filing form, and there also needs to be a country of origin certificate with coffee. This is issued by the International Coffee Organization, and these are all the shipper's responsibilities. So really, the foundation of it is working with your exporters to make sure that everything is set before or directly after your product moves out of the country. And then, in order to clear U.S. Customs, you need several things. To begin with, you need a U.S. Customs bond. This can be a one-time bond or an annual bond if you import more frequently. You also need to provide a copy of the packing list and commercial invoice. You'll need to surrender the original bill of lading. And then shipments need to be cleared by both the FDA and the Customs and Border Protection Agency. And sometimes there are physical inspections by one or both of those agencies. They'll need to be done in order to obtain clearance, and those may require additional information from you as well. With regards to the FDA, they require a prior notice be filed at least 48 hours prior to your shipment's arrival. You have to provide the FDA with information such as the FDA product code, the counter, the market name, the quantity, and the lot code, which is required for food products, shipper's information, country information, anticipated arrival information, U.S. recipient's name and address, name and full address of importer, owner, consignee, carrier, mode of transport. So there are a lot of things that are required with that. FDA also requires registration of all food facilities. So you'll need an FDA registration, and the exporter and or the producer of the coffee must be registered with the FDA as well. So kind of to do all this, we basically work with a U.S. Customs broker to interact with U.S. Customs and with the FDA. And we use a fairly large broker that is also our domestic freight forwarder, because we do a lot of domestic shipping. So we're able to kind of use their size to leverage better prices on steamship lines, and also use them to file the required documents with the CBP and the FDA. And beyond that, there are a few requirements with coffee, and I imagine maybe even more with other food products, such as phytosanitary certificates, certificates of origin, things that are needed for both exporting out of the country of origin and then importing into the U.S. So as far as my recommendations that I would give to growers or processors that are looking to import, like I said, although it can be pretty straightforward with coffee, you know, I have just one product, there's one code. With other food products that may be the same, you might just have a couple, but there are, when you're starting out, there are a few things that can be a bit daunting. One is that you're working with exporters and shipping lines and government agencies that are in another country, which means you're probably in another time zone and they're speaking different languages. So it can definitely help to plan ahead by knowing when and who is best to deal with, and communicate early and often. I certainly have made it a practice to over-communicate, because a lot of times if you don't, you end up missing a deadline, or you don't get the pertinent documentation or information. And the second thing is that not knowing or not following the proper rules and guidelines in the U.S. can certainly cause very expensive mistakes and lengthy delays. And with food products of any type, time is certainly of the essence. I know that it is with us. Which brings me back to say that when working with exporters, I would say it's definitely best to over-communicate to make sure that you're set up for success, because that's kind of the foundation of your whole shipment, is getting it out properly from them. So I would say that new companies that are interested in importing their own products themselves, they should definitely go to the CBP and the FDA websites and find out all the information and documentation and procedures that are necessary with that, and also find a reputable U.S. Customs broker, preferably one, and sorry, I've kind of drifted from going through my slides, preferably one, you know, that has worked with food or with your product in general, and talk to them, help them guide you through everything you need to know and successfully get your product in a timely manner and in a cost-efficient manner, certainly. And then the last thing is just do some research on your own and look for ways that you can save money or save time. For instance, you could, can you file for preferential treatment with NAFTA or CAFTA to defer your processing fee, which is, you know, $300–400 a container, maybe more, depending on the value of your product. Or see if the exporter can issue a bill of lading as an express release. This will help you save some time, because you won't have to have the exporter send the bill of lading to you, and then you send it to your broker, and then they send it back to the country of origin. And again, all these things can kind of relieve a little stress and make things a little easier. Definitely, knowledge is the key, and I would say just do as much research as you can and contact as many people you can in the field that you're dealing with. And so I think that pretty much wraps up what I have. If there are any questions, they're welcome.
Great. Well, thank you very much. That was a really thorough overview, and it was kind of interesting to hear the perspective of, you know, someone who started it from the beginning and knowing all the different people you need to contact and whatnot. So we've had a number of questions that have come in. Someone was wondering, how do you find growers to work with? And related to that, are they organically certified? And is it new that you're helping growers to become certified?
Those are great questions. So how did we find them? Basically, we just started diving into, you know, we would buy coffee from U.S. importers, but then we wanted to know where did this coffee come from? You know, who's getting paid from it? Who are the people that we are paying? Who are they paying? And how much are the growers and the pickers? And how do we find better coffees? And how do we help people create and grow better coffees? So it just kind of started out with basically, we now have a team of buyers, but it started out with one guy who just boots on the ground, was at different origins 250 days a year, and just basically going around to farm and trying to find the farms that had that reputation that we could start working with and help starting to develop better coffees and better systems for people to get paid. And as far as organic certification goes, for the most part, we kind of just seek out organizations that are organic certified that kind of fit into our need for the quality tiers go. And I would say, yes, it is a new thing for us to help partners develop to be able to get certified as organic. This, like I mentioned, our partner in Ethiopia, this is the first time that they're able to sell their coffee as certified organic, not only to us, but to several other. We're just a small percentage of what they do. So they're able to sell that to several other coffee roasters as certified organic, and I can only hope that we will continue to do that in the future as well.
Thanks, that's great. It sounds like, you know, you had mentioned in your talk that you had sort of provided them with a little, by buying it at the higher price the year before, you know, that
exactly, yeah,
assisted them to get it, so that's really great.
And that is an issue. A lot of times, you know, probably some of the coffees that we sell that are not certified organic are produced organically, but the producers are just not able to either afford the certifications or just don't have the motivation to do so. So, yeah.
Great. So we have another question that came in asking if you buy from co-ops, and sort of if you do you recommend buying from co-ops, and why or why not?
Sure, that's a great question as well. Yes, we absolutely do. So we kind of buy from a full spectrum. Like I said, we're buying from about 18 different countries right now. Some of those countries we buy from 5 or 6 or more producers, and some of those are certainly co-ops. And I think the co-op model is, you know, has its pros and cons certainly, but I think it can be a good thing as long as you kind of really dig in and make sure that people are getting paid right and the money is getting distributed right and things are getting done right. Of course, on top of like the quality and everything being there. So I would say yes, co-ops can be great, and we certainly work with some wonderful ones, but I would just be sure that you're investigating everything and making sure that it's a good co-op setup, you know.
Yeah, great. And then someone was wondering, does it get easier to import, or is it just an inherently complex process, even with experience?
I would say it definitely gets easier. I mean, I guess, you know, once you get to know things and get in the rhythm of things, certainly it gets easier, kind of just like anything else. But there's always hiccups, there are always obstacles. Something's always going to happen, and, you know, your container is going to get offloaded somewhere and it's going to miss the boat, or you're not going to have the documents you need, or you're going to get FDA, you know, so there's always some curveballs in there, but certainly after doing it for a long enough time, you just get used to those and you kind of just roll with the punches, but definitely gets easier over time.
Okay, good. That's good to hear.
Yes.
And yeah, and then there was a couple people that wrote in and said that, you know, you had a great list of you know, things you need to pay attention to, and are wondering if you would be willing to share your notes from your talk with the audience. And
yeah, absolutely.
okay.
If people want to get a hold of me through you, or if you want to give them my email address, I'm certainly happy to talk to people individually and
okay, yeah, we can do both.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
And I'll get your notes from you, and we can add that to the list of things that we send out at the end of the webinar. And then kind of related, is there a list of reputable brokers that you know of?
Yeah, I could probably help guide some people towards that. Yeah, absolutely. We use C.H. Robinson, which is, I think, one of the largest. And as I said, they're a freight forwarder as well, so it kind of helps to have an all-in-one package. But I could definitely recommend a few. I can look into it and recommend a few. But I would definitely say, you know, as with anything along the process, just try to dig in and make sure and talk to some people that have used that broker and make sure that they haven't created problems. We actually have. We started out using one broker and it didn't work out for us, so we moved on to another. So there definitely is a difference. They're not all the same.
Yeah. So do your research, sounds like.
Yeah.
So great, thank you very much. That was really great insight into importing products into the U.S. And so thank you again. And so we're going to move on to our final speaker. Just kind of zip through the rest of these slides here. So thank you very much. So our next speaker is Sergio Núñez de Arco, who co-founded Andinian Naturals in 2004 with the goal of promoting sustainable agriculture and raising farmer incomes in his native Bolivia, while giving U.S. consumers reliable access to a nutritious gluten-free whole grain. Drawing on years of experience managing Bolivian development projects and advertising small and mid-sized businesses throughout Latin America, Núñez de Arco has built Andinian Naturals into the leading importer wholesaler of organic fair trade quinoa. He focuses on providing farm-to-market bridge that reduces risk for U.S. purveyors and raises farmer incomes. So thank you, Sergio, for being here today, and we look forward to hearing more about your experience importing organic quinoa.
Thank you very much for the invitation to talk, and especially to CCOF for organizing this event. We've been certified now for just over 10 years with CCOF and have had excellent experience. Just the type of service we get, very prompt in getting our transaction certificates. We've exported to Europe, Japan, Australia, and our main work is actually importing quinoa from the Andean countries, mainly Bolivia, but also Peru and Ecuador. So I have quite a few slides here to go through, and I'll share a little bit about ourselves. Our mission is to share quinoa with the world. We're an import-export business focusing on quinoa as an industrial ingredient. That means we don't sell our brand, so you couldn't find our brand on the shelf. However, our quinoa is in the bag of many brands that you would find in the main retailers, and also as an ingredient in many formulated products, anything from food bars to beverages. So here we have the different colors of quinoa. It comes in a rainbow of colors, the main popular being white. And it's got a great story. We call it an ancient grain. So obviously it was one of the main staples of the Incas, and before them, the various empires in Bolivia and Peru. Let me just go next one. That's actually one of my first slides that I came up with when I was studying the opportunity for quinoa in the U.S. market. And it's just fabulous. It cooks in 15 minutes. It's a whole grain. It's organic. There's no known allergies to it. So we really saw tremendous opportunity for this grain here in the U.S. market. Of course, you have guys like Dr. Oz talking about it. Then you have cook shows featuring it. Let me see. That's a slide showing the various products and brands on the shelf. So it's a pretty heavily loaded shelf with various brands already on the market. So already a competitive market. And you're seeing quinoa also in crackers and cereals. And here's a Kellogg product. So you already have the big companies looking into it. And I can't stop stressing how events like this are important, because they make it easier to grow organic products. They make it easier for us to spread the goodness of organics, the impact it has in reducing synthetic inputs in agriculture, and also just we're deeply convinced that it's just healthier for people. I don't know if this one's healthier. This one's vodka made out of quinoa. It certainly is original. This is a restaurant that features quinoa as a fast food. So they provide healthy fast food, which fast food and health are usually not equated together. They're using quinoa as their base. Here's actually in the back is our factory. I'm currently in California, Northern California, in Yuba City, which is an hour north of California at our facility. However, we also have a facility, a factory in Bolivia, which is the first line you see there. It's called Hachainti, and we work directly with 824 family farms there in Bolivia. We, last year, moved about 11 million pounds. This year will be right about the same level, maybe 12 million pounds. The market's grown very rapidly, and now because the prices were pretty high in 2013, the market stabilized its growth, and I think it's going to pick back up here coming soon. So you see there on the bottom, on the left is our Bolivian facility, and on the right is our U.S. facility. The difference in farms is actually a little bit of a story. This slide is updated. Half of our farmers actually decided not to plant quinoa this year, so we went down to 400 farms because of the low prices of quinoa. So things we work with. And this slide shows in part why. It's because now quinoa has attracted the attention of agro-industrial growers. So we have this competition between the smallholder farmer, organic, and the conventional large-scale agriculture. And we're in the middle of that. Of course, our mission is to increase the incomes of smallholder farmers, so we're definitely making sure those smallholders have a place. The orange line shows the growth of quinoa imports. And on the bottom, I just wanted to point that out as a good source of data. When you're looking for, you're looking to import a product or to export a product, DataMine is a pretty good source to know who's buying and who's supplying. So just amazing source of intelligence. This is one of our graphs where we see the worldwide production and the carryover. So intelligence on your commodity is essential because it will save you from making very expensive mistakes. We still made those mistakes, actually. So in 2014, you can see how there was an overproduction, that green carryover, which made the prices crash. These are the main producers. I'm flying through these. You guys are going to have a copy, so don't worry about it. The price drop. So initially, quinoa was unknown. Then you start seeing it at Whole Foods, at Trader Joe's, at Costco. Then the United Nations calls the International Year of Quinoa, mentioning that quinoa could very well have this opportunity to be a tool to fight world hunger. So a lot of attention. The market is kind of tight on it, so there's a lot of speculation. Prices rise and then crash. And now we're going to start seeing what I think is a birth of a new staple. So something very, very rare we're going to see. The last time something like this was seen was in the 1600s when people imported potatoes and corn to Europe. So we're going to start seeing quinoa as this new staple here on the market. This is a satellite picture of Bolivia. The white on the bottom are the salt flats, some of the poorest lands in the Western Hemisphere, and also the home of some of the poorest farmers in the Western Hemisphere, quinoa farmers that farm lands that are not able to hold any other crop but quinoa because they're salty. They're salty soils, 12,000 feet of altitude at the shores of the salt flat. It's a desert with only 4 8 inches of rain a year, and the farmers here can only farm once every 2 years because they need 2 years worth of rainfall. The quinoa is absolutely beautiful when it's time to harvest it, many, many colors. And I didn't mention the year-round frost, so it has to be a frost-resistant crop. The lands were so marginal and so poor that they were never privatized. So to date, the communities still own the rights to the lands, and they'll distribute them among community members. And so on the bottom of this slide, you'll see the the quinoa fields. And this is a typical quinoa producer family. On average, you have 5 people per family with 3 adults working. This picture was taken about 8 years ago. At that point, this family made $35 per month for the whole family. And today they make an average of $170 per month for the family, and actually have a tin roof and a little solar panel today. So the impact of the quinoa market has been tremendous on these families here. We pay very careful attention to what the income of the farmers are. You'll see it on the right column, and you'll see how as the market price, which is surrounded in blue, varies, it has tremendous impact on the family farm income. And that's something that we bring to attention to our industrial buyers, because they're constantly pushed to buy cheaper and cheaper. Yet nobody points out to them what the impact of this drive to the cheapest is. There's always a cost of production, and usually when you want something cheaper, somebody else is bearing the cost of it. Very often it's the environment, but most often it's actually the farmers. These are pictures of the cooperatives. Each farmer only produces about 7,500 pounds per year. Each truckload is 44,000 pounds. So when we need to buy a truckload, which is our minimum purchase from these associations, they all need to come together, pull their product into a truckload so they can be shipped. Here's a farmer harvesting with a sickle, so it's all manual harvesting, threshing, they're sifting here, and then they'll be winnowed, so the wind takes away the chaff, and we buy the product that is heavier, that's not taken by the wind. We'll negotiate with the farm leaders based on very transparent market prices, so weekend trading prices, plus a premium for organic, and in the case of this farmer, a premium for fair trade as well, which is about 13 cents a pound. They pull their product, pull 4 hours off-road, another 4 hours on the road. These are farmers on their truck because they actually have to take back cash. And the areas they live in are very dangerous. There's no police, no army. Here's our Bolivian facility called Geoauthenticity, which we built in a slum of La Paz outside the city, high in crime, gang activity. We chose this location because we wanted to generate jobs. So we have 170 employees there, and they're all on payroll, all have health insurance. They have 2 free meals a day with a professional chef and a doctor on site. So as a B corporation, we, rather than taking the profits, we'll reinvest them in the facility. So you'll see here part of the washing process for quinoa. It comes naturally covered with a bitter saponin shell, which needs to be taken off. And then the final drying, cleaning process, which needs to be done in a very high-end facility so that it can then be shipped here on these container ships to Oakland or New Jersey, which are the 2 main ports we use. Very important, before we even ship, we take pre-shipment samples. Actually, this is one of the secrets to our success, was having someone we hired on site in Bolivia or in Peru to go out and sample, and then take part of the sample to labs. So here's an analysis we've done of a shipment. And not just that, but we, knowing that, I'm from Bolivia, so I'm not saying this in a bad way, but Bolivia is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And we know that they cheat on taxes. They very well may cheat on their organic certificates. So we actually test every single product we bring in from Bolivia for pesticide residues as a way to assure that we're bringing organic product, and as a way to keep our growers accountable as well. This is an interesting analysis with, we even count the stones and what's in it. And they even take pictures of, here there's actually a little spelling mistake. On the soil on the bottom left it says mad balls. You definitely don't want one of those in your quinoa. That's our facility here in Yuba City, where I'm standing now. That's the outside. We have a really intensive cleaning line that we've set up here. These are targeting the various types of impurities that we would have in the quinoa from stones, twigs, sticks. We have ability to dry, clean, pack on this site. Just going to go through the slides a little faster here. Again, if you have questions on these, they'll be available for you to, these slides will be available for you to just go through. The certifications are very important. We sell a gluten-free product, therefore we get gluten-free certified. We have an organic product, we're organic certified. It's a kosher product, we get kosher certified. We believe that we're a company not just focused on making money, but we want to have a positive social and environmental aspect. We become a B certified corporation. So it's kind of walking the talk is very important. Knowing what your clients need is key. One of the things that has definitely gone up on the importance list is food safety and quality assurance. And this is going to become more and more strict. And as most of us talk here, we best be getting ready for the FSMA and the new regulations coming on board here shortly, because it's going to make it much harder to import. You need to be sure that your vendors are following food safety practices, have the adequate certifications. I think that's off of that list, it's probably the most important. For us, the other thing we've seen is trading is basically disappearing. It's like your travel agents are gone. Traders are going to be gone as well, because with FSMA, increased transparency, people want to know where you're sourcing, who you're sourcing from, and the biggest retailers will want to know how much you're actually making, how much are you paying to your vendors. So this actually is a breakdown we provide one of our clients who wants to buy a 20-pound bag. And we tell them, well, the 20-pound bag, as you see on the bottom right, is $3.71 a pound. Sorry, it's $27.20. $3.71 is what we actually make. And we break down to the cent, down to the stretch wrap, what we put into it in terms of cost. So you'll even see how much it's paid to the farmer in this case. And that's it. There was a whole bunch of slides, so I hope I didn't go too slowly. Feel free to ask any questions, and again, you have the presentation copy.
Yeah, no, that was great, Sergio. It was really interesting to see the whole supply chain from, the plant to the final product, and also to hear a little bit about your pre-testing sort of protocol that you do before you ship. So thank you. And we've had a number of questions come in. Someone is asking, if you don't have a brand on the shelf, they want to know how they can buy your quinoa.
Oh, well, it's a pretty tough one, because a lot of our clients don't allow us to say who we sell to, except
okay.
it's best. It's one of those tough things, because there's little transparency in the food chain. It's very sad, because when your clients tell you that you can't say, it's because they want to have the freedom to choose the cheapest option. So it's a very, very sad and antiquated food supply chain we're in. We do have a couple of transparent companies like Ultra Eco, Eden Foods. Actually, Kellogg is one of our top transparent clients, Costco as well. So Trader Joe's is one of the companies that is most supportive of our work at Origin. And our key market partner is actually ADM. So we're seeing a lot of the large companies paying attention to sustainability and sustainable sourcing, which is very encouraging, actually, as we see the the food system change.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So another question that came up is the data mine. Is that a paid consultant service or is it free online?
No, it's actually you have to pay for it. There's various levels of service. We have one of the highest ones. So it ranges from $100 to $500 depending on what type of information you need. And you can actually get a sample of the data before you decide. I would say if you're seriously importing a commodity, you can't do without that intelligence. It's just too valuable. It helps you see when people are buying, when people are not buying, who's buying from whom, and who all of a sudden is not on the market exporting anymore. It just points you to possible and troublesome supply chain. It's just very, very valuable.
That's good to know. So we're going to take a couple more questions directed for Sergio, but then I also wanted to open it up to all of the other presenters. So if you have questions for anybody, please feel free to send them in. And so Sergio, someone had a question kind of about your quinoa cleaning. Why doesn't your Bolivian cleaning plant de-stone before it arrives in the U.S.? Are you paying to ship unwanted debris?
That is a great question, actually. The answer is it actually does de-stone completely before it ships. As a matter of fact, that facility is approved to sell directly into the largest and most strict of the buyers. And the certification levels it reaches are certification levels, so GSFI levels that, so the very top. And why are there still stones is a question, even though it's already been de-stoned. And that's a great question. Our quinoa is exported at 99.99% purity or higher. However, you still find twigs and a couple stones. Why is that? So you'll find a lot of pre-shipment service providers that are not specialists in your commodity that will go ahead and tell you it's okay. But it's that 0.001% of impurities that matters. Is it a quartz stone that's going to break someone's teeth? So it's really targeting what kind of impurities, because the reality of it is, even if you go to the supermarket and buy an XYZ brand of white rice, which you think is very pure, go ahead and sort through there and you'll find small mud balls, twigs, insect parts, because all these things have a certain level of specification and tolerance that you have to meet. So it's unrealistic to think that there's such thing as 100% purity. It's very, very, very difficult. The best equipment in the world will only clean to 80% of the impurities. So it matters how clean it's coming in and how many times you have to loop it back until it meets your specifications. Great,
thank you. That's also another kind of insight into the food system that may not often think about. So Sergio, thank you again for your presentation. Yeah, it was really great to see, the whole process and kind of how you're running your company as a B Corp. It's really interesting. So thank you again for being here. And then I just wanted to kind of open the questions up to everybody. And we had someone has a question. For small companies looking to import or export, would you just hire a consultant to handle all of these details or train staff? What are people's recommendations on this? So,
yeah, I would say if I can step in for importing is there are a lot of seminars that you could take at fairly reasonable price that will give you a good breakdown of all the information you need, and usually a nice book of a step-by-step guide. And then also, if you're working with a customs broker, they may not come out and give you all the information, but they certainly, if you ask them, they'll walk you through it.
Great.
This is Jeremy. I'll step in for export on the sort of processed products, I would, in the beginning, it might be easier to, depending on what you're exporting, so and how to complicate the labeling. Yes, some products are easier than others. But what we've generally done is hired a consultant and then trained somebody on staff to work with that consultant, learn about the labeling regulations, and then you don't have to do it again after that point. And that's certainly a way that you can be ensured that it is done, and there are certainly cost-effective consultants both for Canada and Mexico and internationally as well.
Great, thank you. So another question from someone who's looking to sell chocolate bars. So if you were selling chocolate bars, where would you go for data about that commodity? Anybody has any ideas? Sounds like it might be out of our area of expertise, but we can look into that. And then one final question for all of our presenters. Regarding the U.S. election, are organic handlers likely to be affected if trade deals are renegotiated?
Yeah, this is Gamma. I'll take that for a second. So at this point, you know, speculation isn't really getting us very far. It doesn't necessarily look like anything will be renegotiated, but you know, only time will tell. If something were to be renegotiated, then yes, it would affect operations. But the way that our trade agreements have been written out and the amount of time and effort that went into them makes it pretty likely that it would take a lot of time to renegotiate them, and so it wouldn't. I wouldn't see anything happening anytime soon, if anything even does happen.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. So I just wanted to say thank you again to all of our speakers. Thank you for being here and taking the time out of your busy days to kind of give us a good overview of importing and exporting organic products. As a reminder, we will be sending out a recording of the webinar, the slides in PDF, and then there's a number of things mentioned that people wanted, so we'll kind of compile those and send them out in an email. And our sponsor, .organic, also offered to give webinar participants a discount on a domain name, so if that's something you're interested in, that will be there. So in addition to this webinar, CCOF offers a lot of different education events. Coming up in December, we have a wholesale tour of the San Francisco Wholesale Produce Market, and then in February is the CCOF annual conference, which is a really good place to kind of meet other people in the organic community and network and eat a lot of really good food. There are a lot of organic certifiers out there. We always recommend people looking for an organic certifier that you do your homework and find a certifier that works best for your business. If you're interested in finding out about certification with CCOF, Jane Wade is our new applicant guru who can kind of lead you through the process and answer any of your questions. And thank you for being here today. We hope that you found the presentation helpful, and please fill out the evaluation form that pops up after the webinar ends. Your input helps us develop and improve our education programming. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. We're always happy to talk with you or connect you with someone else. So thanks again, and have a good day.
Thank you.